Snake Eye is a cancer on the game. It has such a negative warping effect on the format. Oh, this is gonna be a good one. YouTube! The end of Snake Eyes is actually here. The deck has been defeated finally, and it's time to make way for our Virtual World Overlords. The question therefore would be, is VFD-less Virtual World now the best deck? Well, the thing is, if you're Spanish, that might actually be an unequivocal oui.
This may sound like a dumb question, but does Europe have any Spanish-speaking countries?
YCS Indianapolis has just concluded, and we have one of the most diverse formats never. Before we get into the body of today's discussion, which, I suppose we could start with the positives. There's not many, but there's some. Paulo Goncalves has picked up his 4th major event win, and boy, did he really give us a thoughtful, in-depth, and very eloquent explanation and analysis of his preparation and lead up to this tournament.
Brazil!
Ah, thanks, Paulo. What is he like? Brazil mentioned. So, naturally, despite this amazing accomplishment, deck-wise, the community is furious once again. I mean, to be fair, we're always mad. You think there's anything to be happy about when you've got Skill Drain in one format, Maxi in the other, Fenrir in both of them, and Block Dragon in none of them? Indianapolis was filled with interesting plays. We saw double Puppet Lock on stream. I mean, branded players are just trolling themselves at this point. But we also did see one of the most hype plays we've ever witnessed during a YCS final.
Cross-out Designator on Skill Drain.
This format really is just grown men throwing staples at each other. I mean, come on. Look at this very real feature match that definitely happened. All right, so before we get into the main body of today's discussion, let's do a little bit of quick housekeeping. We're hosting a Table 500 this Friday, which, as you know, every couple of months, you send in your stupid but hilarious replays for us to watch. Pause the video for more information on how you can send in your funny Master Duel replay. And second, we have the final ever last card standing tournament of Season 1 coming up later this month. Join the Discord to be able to sign up. All right, let's get into today's discussion. Number 1, let's look at some of the reactions and discourse online surrounding YCS Indianapolis and the Snake Eye meta. Number 2, we'll talk about the potential lead up to the diverse metagame we could have maybe potentially have had, but then Snake Eye decided to ruin it. And number 3, we'll look at some of the takeaways, conclusions that we can draw from YCS Indianapolis, as well as some closing thoughts on the format, metagame, and Tier 0 from myself. Please fix this dog shit format. Well, I mean, at least he's being honest. I just really don't understand how anyone can be so mean about this. I mean, just try be constructive. Try stay calm. Don't let your emotions get ahead of you. And just give constructive feedback where necessary. Because, I mean, I would never do that. Look at this fucking garbage! Fix your game! Fix your game! Alright, so we led with Jesse's tweet here, and let's discuss what exactly he's yapping about. Sorry, I've just got so many relevant memes. The ADHD content has to be maintained for the average Farfa viewer. This is just an artistic representation of myself. Anyway, subscribe for more. Snake Eyes sucks because it's a 1-card combo deck, of which there are 15 plus starter cards, and all of them generate somewhere in the region of like 5 to 8 extra cards just by itself. Outside of the pure raw card advantage you get, plus the 3 or 4 actual real disruptions you maintain, not including your hand traps, with the ability and follow-up to do all of it again on the next turn if you don't kill them that turn, and even maintaining the ability to go into a grind game. Now, because your deck is 15 starters, 1-card combos, what else do you do with that deck building space? Well, you just play 20 defensive cards because you just have the room. 15 hand traps, crossouts, and a talent or two, couple of engine requirements, and boom, that's a 40-card deck list, which is basically unbeatable outside of the mirror, and against Rogue, it feels like cross-ban list. It's genuinely like bringing 2 different decks from 2 different generations of the game. It's night and day. Rogue players who haven't quit the game yet, I mean, just 07 to you boys. There's been a best deck of all time contender every year for like probably the last 4 years in a row now, by the way. So it's particularly egregious because we just constantly get a new Tier 0 deck, and the thing is, people are just getting sick of it. It becomes a little bit impossible to discuss Tier 0 and talk about the best decks of all time without, of course, mentioning Tier Ishizu. Tier Ishizu really has become the barometer and measurement and standard for which we measure and discuss power in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, there's been a lot of discussion online about tier Shizu on social media because it's just the natural comparison. The difference one would argue here is that tier Shizu mirror matches were kind of decent. Snake Eye mirror matches can sometimes feel like comparing hands and who has the better starter or extend their combinations with hand traps. Now, that's not to take away from the achievements of the players that have been doing consistently well over the course of this whole format, and there are plenty of them who have been doing as such. But the reality is that it is far less interactive than some of the other better mirror matches we've had historically. Going as far back as Dragon Rulers, Necros, Zodiac somewhat recently, and of course, Tier Limit most recently. All of these were tier 0 decks that were very fun to play, sometimes against, maybe not so much, but at least against each other, they've been pretty decent mirror matches, which is why I think people are really upset about this. Even competitive players, and especially non-competitive / rogue casual players, everyone is suffering right now. That's really the biggest takeaway from this, is this isn't really enjoyable or benefiting anyone. But to be fair, Jesse could be wrong. Okay guys, but with all due respect, how are you not prepared for Snake Eyes at this point? It's a little ridiculous to not have a well thought out plan when entering a tournament. I'm blown away. Potentially the worst feature matches in the history of time. I saw hand traps get chucked on the board and a crossout getting activated causing a person to scoop. E-ban OSS. Build a time machine and take me back to power the elements. Something. Anything. Yu-Gi-Oh! Hasn't felt the same for like 8 to 9 months. It's been possibly the most unfun, punishing, miserable few tournaments, and despite hitting huge generic extra deck cards, nothing changed. And we're getting slapped in the face with Ulti, Snake Eye Ash, and OTS 25. It all feels so out of touch. And based on the number of likes and retweets and everything on social media, this is not exactly an exception to the rule. A lot of people do kind of feel the same way and share the sentiment. But there's an interesting point brought up here specifically about Baron Savage that Crush Cards talked about, and it's something that has actually sparked a decent amount of discord across things like Reddit. This idea that Baron and Savage and Linkreebo were not the problem cards because guess what? 25 or 24 out of the 32 top cut spots of YCS Indianapolis were Snake Eye. So realistically, that last ban list didn't do anything, despite it being one of the biggest shifts in terms of card design, philosophy, and R&D that we've seen in the ban list over many years now, realistically. Because essentially, Konami appear to have taken a completely different stance on their view of what is considered a fair and reasonable boss monster. Now, I wanted to bring up this point specifically because one argument that people are talking about here is that, well, Baron and Savage are fine. Linkreebo's okay. They should come back because clearly that's not the issue with Snake Eye. Now, my counter to that, my opinion, of course, just an opinion, could be wrong here, I don't know. I still think those cards are toxic, and while those bans obviously were not going to do anything for Snake Eye, they weren't going to hit Snake Eye regardless, right? So they had to do something to make it appear that Snake Eye was going to be hit because of all the various, you know, understandings of the ban list we have as a community, because of reprints, keeping a deck fresh and new and maintained in a format to maximize tins or whatever, you know, the discourse surrounding that. So Snake Eye was never really going to be the target until after most likely the WCQ season. That doesn't mean the last ban list was a bad ban list, because Baron, Savage, Linkreebo, in my opinion, are problematic cards, and this could be a discussion for another time, which we talk about sometimes on the podcast and have discussed specifically the extra deck on the podcast. Heart of the Cast, subscribe, link in the description down below. So without going too in depth into the details here, Baron, Savage, Linkreebo are good bans. They're not really interesting or fun boss monsters, and Link 1 monsters generally are considered to be a mistake by most people. That's just an opinion. You might agree or disagree, and then I don't want to get into the details here, but I just want to point out that, yeah, the last ban list I don't think really was supposed to hit Snake Eye in a sense. It was just a shift in boss monster design. And I think that was a good shift in boss monster design. Topic number 2. So I jokingly, well, I haven't made that reference in a few years, jokingly mentioned at the start of the video that Virtual World was now the best deck. But on your screen now, you're looking at the spreadsheet. Yeah, it's a very fine piece of work that I shall leave a link to in the description that has all kinds of ridiculously good data here, percentages of the decks, running, various staples, the breakdowns of the meta, divided into various regions, and the pie charts for all sorts of different information. Now, I bring this up because leading up to India and Polis, sorry, I have to maintain the Farfa viewer watch time. In some countries, it was actually looking like Snake Eye wasn't even the best deck. We saw some top cut breakdowns, for example, where Tenpai was more represented even. And there was a genuine hope from the community last week leading up to the final YCS of the season. Perhaps Snake Eye was potentially falling off a little bit, and the meta was adapting slowly and surely as we saw decks like Melodious win an entire national championship. Top cuts were actually primarily Tenpai in some countries. But no. Not even close. I mean, just look at this pie chart, for God's sake. Yeah, one Labyrinth deck out of top 8. And then further than that in top 4, the Labyrinth deck lost 4 Snake Eye at YCS Indianapolis. Deck lists were all basically the same. There's nothing to cook anymore. This deck is so solved. It's so dull and, for all intents and purposes, is boring and not a fun format anymore. Thoughts and prayers on this? Well, I've given my opinions on a couple of aspects already, specifically with the last ban list and how I think that was maybe one of the more important things I wanted to bring up, because we have had this same discussion over and over again quite a number of times with regards to the viability of Tier 0. Is it good? Is it bad? Should it be a thing? But regardless of where you stand in that discussion and whatever your opinion is, overall, right now, the majority opinion across the entire spectrum of Yu-Gi-Oh players, from top tier competitive all the way down to the rogue casual players, no one is really having fun right now. Without using the strong words of Jesse Cotton, to tell you the truth, format's not too good right now. Info's coming out in a couple of weeks, which I think is going to have the Ritual Beast support, Fiendsmiths, Exodia stuff? Hell, maybe that'll be best deck. It probably won't. Now, Beatrice is going to be a one-card, no normal summon combo in Snake Eye that you can use to set up and do stupid things. Or summon the DDD Solemn Warling like Unchained used to do. Yeah, so in some ways, Snake Eye is getting even stronger next set. I'm sorry for this one to be a bit of a negative downer, but there's been a lot of rumblings online. I thought I would probably bring a lot of that discussion together and discuss it in this video. It's not a good time for Yu-Gi-Oh! Coupled with some of the disappointing things like no YCSs in Europe, new decks and archetypes haven't really felt completely interesting, and even if they are interesting, they are totally overshadowed by the existence of Snake Eye. Let me know what your opinion is on the current format down below. Check the description for all the stuff I've mentioned throughout the video. Subscribe for more, hit the bell notification, follow my Twitch stream on twitch.tv/Farfa, and until next time, adios!
Damn, man, this shit sucks.